Lust comes from Latin luxus, which means abundance, exuberance within the framework of sexual morality, that is, disorder and uncontrolled sexual desire. In our case, we have decided to focus it not only on the sexual one, but also on the sense of lust that refers to a passionate desire for something. Lasciviousness, assimilable to lust, is the appetite or excessive desire for sexual pleasures, which are not only reduced to the coital act, but also to those experienced through sensations provided by the five senses: tactile, visual, olfactory, gustatory, and auditory. This topic, due to its great quantity of interpretations and psychological and social concepts, as well as religion, allowed us to develop in a wide way the different works and epochs to study in relation to the subject to be treated. First, we have the world set in the prehistory stages, in which our group decides to choose a representation of a cave painting, where we could observe several human figures, some female figures especially showing naked and dancing unconventionally, and a male in the middle of the performance enjoying the stage.
This work served to demonstrate and note that since the most primitive stage in which humans of the time used the coast of the caves to represent scenes of everyday life such as hunting and of many types, reflects therefore that these early sapiens were already engaged in such activities, like the one you can see in this image, where you can interpret a certain festive atmosphere in which those presents made with certain curvatures and movement were in possession of some hallucinogenic substance and in addition to sexual scenery. On the other hand, we have the representation made in papyrus of ancient Egypt. In it, we can observe a group of female figures, especially three, probably belonging to the high society. These figures each carry in their hand a poppy, from which substance such as opium come. The first seems to contemplate it, while the other two approach them to the nasal passages, putting into practice the olfactory senses. This representation serves to reinforce the idea that, as I have already mentioned, in ancient times such substances are already produced and consumed, and that even though they are socially related to the less affluent social classes, we can observe that even in the richest and unimaginable places these substances were and are present.
Thirdly, we have the representation of an story from a work of art belonging to the ancient Greece, in which one we saw a representation of a naked male, which we interpreted that as a philosopher, nearly three dressed females, which it seems as ostentose. Years after their realization, their heads were lost. The idea of this work revolved mainly around the idea of sexual desire, of the concept of lust, because it was the man who, after having this uncontrolled desire, decided of cut off the girl heads. Fourthly, as for the fourth work of medieval art, we decide to choose a painting of the Bosco that has relation with the seven deadly sins. In the picture are reflected as well differentiated through different isolate representation each of the others. We decide to focus on the last at the end is our object of study during all our projects. In this representation, we can appreciate the historical relation that lust has had with the concept of evil, which has direct relation with the religious ideas that maintain that when you fall into such temptation, you will be inexorably led to hell, just as we can see illustrated in the work of art.
It's me, hi, I'm Miguel. And finally, regarding the work, we organize ourselves through a shared document in which we put all the information we have about the work, and we put it in common. And on the other hand, to perform the work more effectively, we are in minimum once per week to continue work on them. For the distribution of the work to exhibitions such as online works, we generally rely on a fair distribution of the information obtained in common. And the first conclusion we have is that the last is a passionate desire, as we mentioned before, and had always existed in our species as human from the first coming to our present. The human is moved by these feelings and need, and since it began to steadily they became even more passionate. Yeah. Also, it's curious that in the Western culture, that passions and needs has always been covered up as something negative, and this is something that should not to be done. Being lustful will take us to our end and therefore to hell. And however, as it has always been present, it has been represented in art, although in a smaller side than the religious examples. But from prehistory to ancient Egypt to medieval age to classical Greece, the art has reflected the most denigrant passions of humans, as well as the virtues, but something that has always been and will be.
This work has been of great help for our learning, both in the English language and in the art and theme that we have dealt with throughout the quarter. Last, we have understood that it's much more than sexual desire. It's to live passionately and having, as the center of life, both carnal and sensory pleasure. By having to do this work in another language, which is not our first language, we have acquired an important wealth and variety of vocabulary in relation to the different artistic forms that we have dealt with. We have looked for a variety of works that we found interesting and that have helped us to choose the ones that we finally chose. In conclusion, we have known a lot of new works, and we also have spent a good time together to elaborate these works along the subjects. In the end, we will stay with the new artistic notions, which has served us to know better in group and individually.